Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. I am your host, Jim Kelgard. That's right, Jim, with two M's. Why? Well, I don't know. My mom had dropped me on my head a few times. That probably explains a few things, but that's beside the point. Joining me tonight, of course, is our awesome all star cast of people that we have here to help us go down this rabbit hole of the unexplained. And tonight, we're going to be tackling the topic of the recent UAP hearing that the House Oversight Committee held back on let's see, I think it was the 9th of September or thereabouts. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the latest update regarding the 3I Atlas interstellar object. We're going to talk a bit about that. And also, there was an announcement that NASA made about a week or so ago that was buried by some of the larger news items. And we're going to provide an update on that and just try to have as much fun as we can in the process. And so, to get started here, let me introduce our all-star rock star panel of folks that'll be joining the discussion. Of course, we have the always awesome, the legendary Mr. Roger Stokes. Rogelio, how are you doing, buddy?
I am hanging in there. It's good to see everybody. Glad to be here. And welcome to another fantastic episode of The Soul of the Unexplained. Super excited to be here, of course, with my co-host Jim, and also with Johnny Stratton and my friend John Nyberger. So welcome, guys.
Yeah, Mr. Nyberger, how are you doing? How about those Broncos, man?
Oh Lord. They played pretty well last week, actually.
Yeah,
They played well enough to win, sort of.
sort of.
Yeah.
We won't
Uh,
talk about my Raiders.
The
right.
who?
Exactly. My point exactly. Go Bills.
Right.
Johnny, how are you doing? Good to see you again, buddy.
It's good to see everybody here too. How's everybody doing? I know you're asking me, but how about yourself, Jim? How are you?
I am doing okay. I know that I was talking about that cold that I developed after I came home from Phenomicon, and I'm happy to say that the cold is pretty well gone. However, uh, those that may know, I have a condition known as COPD, chronic obstructed pulmonary disease, which basically means that I always have some level of bronchitis throughout my whole life. And most of the time, I have it pretty well under control. But the problem I have is anytime I develop a cold and get a cough, even if it's a little tiny cough, it starts to eventually build into a cough that gets so severe that even after all the other symptoms of the cold have disappeared, I get in these rapid fire coughing fits, if you will. And I get to where I'm coughing so much and so hard that I can't catch a breath in between coughs, and I end up momentarily losing consciousness. I pass out. And sometimes that happens. Thankfully, most of the time I'm either laying down or sitting in a chair, but it has happened before when I've been driving, which is really scary because I have to try to
Mm.
pull over to the side of the road and put the vehicle in park before I go completely unconscious and that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a struggle, and it's been really bad the last couple of days. But today is the first day, fingers crossed, where the coughing hasn't been too bad. So
Oh,
hopefully,
good.
knock on wood, we'll get through the podcast today with no problems. But my issues are absolutely nothing compared to what our colleague Mr. Stokes has been going through. How are you? How are things progressing for you on that front, Roger?
They are progressing slowly, much more slowly than I would like, which is frustrating. But coming up on Monday, I have a bunch of pulmonary um, and lung type tests that they're going to do to see how that is affecting my heart, to try to either look and rule that out as a potential factor, um, or if there's something there that they had missed in the past. So I have lab work and a bunch of tests done on Monday, and then the following Tuesday on the 23rd, I go in and talk to the doctor about the results. So it's going to be I'm interested, apprehensive, to find out what we're gonna do. The good thing is that I did get in touch with my cardiothoracic surgeon, Dr. Sarah Piera, out of the University of Indiana, and talked to her, and she is starting back up her clinic here the 1st of October. And in talking with her, said she would love to have me come see her and relook at my case from when I saw her at the University of Utah back in July. So that gives me a little bit of hope because she was one that did recommend surgery and rebuilding my aortic root and all of that stuff there. So it'll be good to get her caught up on everything that's happened and figure out what those next steps are. So I'm have a glimmer of hope there that we'll get to the bottom of this and I'll get feeling better. But that's where everything stands right now. And Jimm, do not minimize your own pain. Going through what you're going through would suck.
It does.
100%.
It definitely does. But Roger, just know that we are all still praying for you and still sending you as many positive thoughts as we can. I know that everybody all over the world that is aware of our podcast and is connected to us, they're all on your side. They're all fighting for you as well. And I'm going to say it just right now, Raj. If you after you have these tests on your lungs and they determine that your lungs are not the root cause of it, your surgeon's going to get the ugly side of Brooklyn.
Yes.
He's going to
Not
hear
the good one.
He's not the nice side of Brooklyn. And believe me, there is a nice side of Brooklyn, folks. But
No, I didn't know there was a nice side of Brooklyn. I mean, the nice surgeon that's going to help him.
The,
yeah,
the crazy thing is that I was going back through my tests and a lot of so I've done some research and there's a condition out there called pulmonary hypertension, which if you have, it mimics a lot of the heart function symptoms. However, I did have a recent angiogram in which they placed did the catheterizations in both the left and right sides of my heart, and I was told there's no pulmonary hypertension. So that's ruled that out. So if it's not that, it's got to be some rare weird thing in the lungs. So I'm feeling about 95% that I'm going to go in there and they're going to say, we feel like your pulmonary system, your lungs are okay and it's not contributing to what's going on. I could be wrong and I hope that I am. And they're like, oh, yes, we found this and that there's something that they can do and I'll feel better because, yeah, that would be the ideal thing. But we will wait and see. So I'm just cautiously optimistic knowing that a couple of tests have already shown that I don't have the pulmonary hypertension. So,
well, we're still keeping those fingers crossed and everything else that we can to see that you have success and that we can move this thing forward for you because heaven knows you've been through enough as it is and your wife as well. And we're all pulling for you, buddy.
yeah, I appreciate it. I just want to get to the point where it's like we don't have to talk about the stuff. We can talk about all the fun stuff and not have to worry about all of us. So.
Yes, indeed. Folks, don't get sick in America because the healthcare system here is, yeah. But
Be mindful that I work in the healthcare system.
Right.
So that should tell everybody listening how bad the healthcare system can be if I work in it.
Now, if there's anything good to be said about it, it's because we have somebody like you working in the healthcare system. But
That's right.
we will approach that topic for another day, perhaps. But today, we are going to
want to say,
sure,
just really quick. Sorry, Jimm, to catch up.
No,
but I do want
you had your chance. Sit down. You go to hell and you die.
I did want to say that because I don't think I can say this enough, but especially at this year's Phenomicon and last year's Phenomicon, all three of you have been so helpful. And Jonny, especially with your medical background and being there and willing and able to help and providing the support, you, Jimm, as well as you, John. It means more to me than you guys will ever know. So again, a heartfelt thanks for the support, especially trying to make it through a huge conference like that. So thank you.
Absolutely. You bet.
Always happy to.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
indeed.
More than welcome.
Yes, indeed, folks. So let's go ahead and let's put those battle helmets on, as somebody likes to say, and let's go down this rabbit hole known as UAP stuff. And let's talk about the UAP congressional hearing that took place a little over a week ago on, I want to say, the 9th of September in Washington, D.C., the House Oversight Committee. And it was led by Representative Luna, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong on that, but memories these days just gone. But lots to talk about. This one had more than 3 witnesses that testified. And we're going to just, first of all, we'll name off who all of them are. And John and Johnny, I'm going to ask you to help me out with the ones that I could not remember. So first of all, we had Jeff Nucitelli, who was a member, who was an MP in the U.S. Air Force for about 16 years. And then we also had Chief Alexandro Wiggins, I think was his name. He was with the Navy. He was a Naval Operations Senior Petty Officer, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, the legendary George Knapp, investigative journalist, Peabody Award-winning investigative journalist, based out of Las Vegas, Mr. UFO, as they call him, because, of course, back in 1989, he's the one that did the Bob Lazar story, and it just kind of, all the UFO stuff just kind of fell in his lap. So there were other people that testified other than those 3. And John, we'll start with you. Who else did I miss?
Let's see. Did you get
Dylan
Borland?
Dylan Borland. Okay. And
Yep.
and
U.S. Air Force.
Yeah,
Yep.
U.S. Air Force. Joe Spielberger. Did you say him?
No.
Also U.S. Air Force.
Okay.
And Senior Policy Counsel at the Project on Government Oversight.
Cool. All right. So
I think that's it, right? I think we got.
So yeah, that's
Yep.
that's
And then the hearing was led by Representative Nancy Mace with I can't even pronounce this poor dude's name. Glenn Grothman.
okay. Sounds about right.
That's
So it wasn't Representative Luna then. So thank you for the correction on that.
Yeah, because I thought
Luna was in charge of the subpoenas and the acquisition of the speakers, essentially, the people they were interviewing, the interviewees.
Right.
Okay,
Oh.
I thought, because I think she's the committee chair, though, right?
Yes, that sounds about right, I think.
Or I guess more specifically, I'm looking here just for clarification. Chair of the task force on the declassification of federal secrets.
Yes.
So
Yes.
whatever that is, she's the chair, the committee chair of that.
It's secret, so they can't tell us. So
yeah.
All righty, so let's dive in and talk about. We'll talk a little bit about Jeff Nucitelli's opening statement that he gave. And again, he is the former MP, military police officer, with the U.S. Air Force for 16 years. And he talks about how between 2003 and 2005, he was aware of 5 different UAPs that were seen over Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. He personally witnessed one of these incidents on October 14th, 2003, and the UAP incursions began around that time. And specifically, the UAP that he saw has come to be known as the glowing red square UAP. And so all these reports that Nucitelli talks about took place over Vandenberg Missile Base, Air Force Base there in California. He says that the official incident reports were given to Arrow, and that on that same evening that he saw this red square, that a large triangular-shaped UAP flew in at extraordinary speed onto the base. It hovered above at least 5 base personnel that saw this craft and described it as being as big as a football field, and it eventually raced off at incredible speeds instantaneously. 1 week later, another large UAP landed on the base's flight line momentarily and again shot off at instantaneously, impossible speeds. The eyewitnesses to this incident were threatened and intimidated by their superiors and were told not to discuss it. 3 years later, in 2005, Nucitelli talks about how there was a large triangular craft, larger than a C-130, that was seen, and it hovered over the base for a short period of time and then flew off into the darkness. In 2005, Nucitelli was, after this most recent event in 2005, he was sitting at home in his backyard with several of his off duty military police officer friends when they saw a bright object in the sky that didn't behave like a satellite. It would dart around the sky, starting and stopping instantaneously, and would seem to disappear only to reappear at another point in the sky. He described it as a sphere of bright light, roughly 30 yards in diameter, and eventually it came down to within roughly 250 feet of his backyard. It hovered for a few moments and then casually accelerated away and disappeared. Nucitelli says that his experience changed his life and the lives of his colleagues that also witnessed the events. And so that was his opening statement, and quite a quite an impactful opening statement. This gentleman was a military police officer with over 16 years of experience, and he tells of these incidents where there were multiple witnesses involved in seeing the phenomena that appeared on the base. And the glowing red square is one that we've, if you're anybody like me that tends to pay attention to this UAP topic, the glowing red square is a well-known incident that happened, back in 2003 or thereabouts. So quite a good, interesting start to for the opening statements. Jonny, what are your thoughts? What did you take away from his opening statement?
Well, the biggest thing I took away from that is how he discussed the repercussions of trying to report and discuss, and uh, it's really unfortunate, especially in 2003. I mean, as we've discussed before, there's a huge stigma about reporting, and there's not very many protections. So it negatively impacted his career and his personal life, and everyone calling him crazy. I do appreciate that he made a request of Congress to seek further protections for people that are coming forward, as he described them as whistleblowers, but really it's, you know, reporters. I mean, this is a national intelligence problem. This is an airspace incursion problem, and he's doing his job as a member of the military to defend our airspace. And he wasn't taken seriously, and he was essentially reprimanded for it. So,
Right.
there's a lot that goes into this, and hopefully going forward, this changes.
And that is a big problem that we hear from, even going back to David Grush, these reprisals, these administrative reprisals or administrative terrorism, which I believe is how Grush actually defined it. John, what are some of your thoughts from that opening statement by Mr. Nucitelli?
Well, I think that one of the things that's interesting that ties into some things we've talked about before is the fact that this event was captured on multiple sensors. This was corroborated by, this isn't just a sighting. This is corroborated by technology. Multiple sensor platforms captured this data and they sent it upstream, right?
Right.
They sent it up the chain of command,
Hmm.
said, here's what we saw. What the hell do we do about this? And they get nothing, at least nothing good, nothing useful, right?
Right.
And and I think that this is probably kind of skipping ahead, maybe, or skipping back to prior episodes, but that's the sort of thing our friend Jay Stratton was trying to solve. It's like we shouldn't have stigma. We should have reporting chains for this type of thing so that we can handle this responsibly and appropriately, And instead, you have people like this that have, multiple witnesses, I think, but at
Hmm.
least multiple sensor platforms, of course. So there must have been multiple witnesses in different varieties.
Right.
Why are they left hanging? You know, because we're just hearing a small sampling of the types of things that happen in our military. It's important for them to be able to report this stuff without fear of reprisal, and to know that that data is going to get to some competent people who are going to know what to do with it and process it and give appropriate guidance. And the fact that these guys just get nothing but bad stuff, recrimination and all the other stuff. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it really is. And it also takes me back to something that our good friend Caleb Bench has said to me and Roger, and I'm sure to you guys as well, is that Caleb takes things very seriously whenever he encounters something like a UAP or any kind of anomalous activity, because his day job, he is a police officer, just as this Nucitelli guy is. And one thing that you have to be able to depend on for a police officer is to tell the truth, right? I mean, kind of a novel idea in the modern world. I realize that still, but uh, these are the people who get called to testify under oath in a court of law anytime there is some kind of a criminal trial that goes on. So the ability for police officers to tell the truth is one of the most basic aspects of being a peace officer, whether that be in the civilian arena or in the military. They're both the same. So for this military police officer to come forward and to speak so matter of factly about what he says, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, that does carry a little bit more weight as far as what his testimony as far as how I'm going to consider it, because unless this guy is a complete and total scumbag and corrupt as they get, which I have no indicator at all that he is, then the fact that his job as an MP would have been to be meticulous in how he makes and fills out reports, and so I have a feeling that this particular uh, these experiences that Nichitelli talked about, probably should be taken very seriously. At least that's kind of what I think about it. Roger, how about you? What do you have to say about it?
Yeah, no, I agree with all your thoughts. I think it's something that we've seen just time and time again, and it's just the larger pattern and kind of the disturbing behavior of our government overall, where you have these, back to what Jonny was saying, we have ways to report these things, and we should be reporting these things. It's our airspace, it's our country, right? And if there's something that is foreign, unknown, that is violating that airspace, and we don't know what it is, these men and women have a duty, right? Their constitutional duty to protect our country and to filter that information up. And the fact that we see the systemic, profiling of these individuals where it ruins their lives, their careers, to the extent that, that I'm sure they have a lot of trauma from the ridicule. And, I don't think anybody is going into this with like, oh, hey, this is just fun. Let's make up something and pass it up the board. To what John Nyberger said, you have the technical aspect of it. It was marked with different sensors. You have the corroborating facts that go along with the visual eyewitnesses, and they're like, let's send this up because we don't know what it is. This could be hostile. And yet you get your superiors coming back down and saying, no, like, you're going to be reprimanded if you talk about this. You're going to be branded as crazy. And we've seen those intimidation tactics in the past. And to me, I think that that's one of the biggest things that going forward with the UAP task force and these hearings is to continue to get the protections for these individuals that can come forward and report these type of things. It's unfortunate that we, as just, I mean, considering the larger universe and humanity at large, why would we do this to people? Let's really get to the bottom of this. But again, there are bad actors out there, and it's up to us, I think, the American people and abroad, the larger people of Earth, to come together and try to figure these things out and demand that transparency and really get to the bottom of what's going on here. Because if the United States isn't safe, then nowhere's safe.
Right. Well said. I think another thing that we want to make sure we establish right now, because we're going to see this play out in the opening statement of, well, for one thing, the next guy that we're going to be talking about, Chief Wiggins. But the overarching thing here, we all want to bear in mind, and Jonny mentioned it earlier. It was either John or Jonny. One of you mentioned the fact that these are showing up on uh, multiple sensors. The data is confirming that these are real objects, real in the sense that they are showing up on our technology is able to sense them. So these are not optical illusions. These are not hallucinations that these personnel for the military are witnessing out there on the military bases and off the coast of California and elsewhere. So the the simple fact is, whatever these things are, they are real, they are tangible, they are solid objects of some kind. And that is pretty significant. That's a pretty big hurdle for a lot of people to get over, but that is the reality of these UAP, is that they are real physical solid objects. The very first report by Arrow even said as much. These are actual tangible objects. They are not illusions, they are not hallucinations, they are real anomalous objects. So that then takes us to the gentleman that gave his the second person to give his opening statement, and that would be his name is Alexander Wiggins, and he's a current active duty U.S. Navy Operations Specialist, Senior Chief Petty Officer. On February 15th, 2023, off the coast of Southern California, on the USS Jackson, he observed a self-luminous tic-tac-shaped object emerge from the ocean, which then joined three identical tic-tac craft that were already hovering above the surface. The four craft in unison then instantaneously accelerated away at impossible speeds and vanished. He goes on to say that there was no sonic boom, there were no contrails, no visible means of conventional propulsion, and no flight services, so no wings, ailerons, things like that. The craft was what we've come to know as transmedium in nature. And Chief Wiggins goes on to say that the incident was captured on multiple sensor platforms, and that these types of incidents happen fairly frequently off the coast of Southern California and have been seen by untold numbers of airmen, sailors, you name it. So as he wraps up his opening statement, because it was kind of short and sweet, he emphasized the importance of figuring this greater issue of UAPs out from an aviation and maritime safety perspective, and as also from a national security perspective. He also pushes for stigma-free reporting and protection for all that come forward from career reprisals. And I know that we've talked about this before, but particularly when it comes to somebody that has some kind of a flight status, meaning that they are authorized to pilot or to be in an aircraft of some kind. In the past, there has been such a stigma around this notion of even admitting that you saw a UFO or a UAP, let alone go to the trouble of filling out a report and filing a report that you've seen one. That a lot of times in the past, we've heard stories about how pilots and aircrew members would be grounded because they're considered a risk, because, because the official word at that time was, well, these things don't exist. They're all, they either are hallucinations or optical illusions or, some, kind of invisible thing that's not really there, kind of the woohoo kind of thing. So, and so Officer Wiggins here, he really emphasized that. And that's kind of a thread that we see through all of these testimonies that were given that day. But I thought it was particularly interesting, and John, we'll start with you. I thought it was interesting how he saw tic-tac shaped craft. Not only was it coming from underneath the surface of the ocean, but that once it broke the surface and got airborne, that there were already three additional tic-tac craft identical to it that were hovering. And again, this happened in 2023, just 2 years ago, whereas the legendary tic-tac incident that happened in the USS Nimitz carrier group back in 2004. So we're talking almost 2 decades removed from when the 2004 tic-tac sighting happened with Commander Fravor and Alex Dietrich and all the pilots out there off the coast of California. Same basic area, right? But then now we have uh, this Alexander Wiggins coming forward and saying, I also saw a Tic Tac shaped craft exhibiting the same exact flight characteristics, the same appearance as what we saw in 2004. Now, if that's not enough to say, okay, there really is something to this Tic Tac stuff, if now we have a report of it happening in the same basic geographic location within probably, no more than a couple 100 miles, would be my guess of where the original Tic Tac incident occurred. So, John, what does that say to you? Any that send off any bells or whistles for you?
Yeah, sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And Lockheed must be busy, right?
Right? Wink, 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 nudge, nudge.
Yeah, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No, for the record, I do not believe this is Lockheed. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I thought the transmedium part was intriguing because that was something I think they suspected in the original incident. They
Right,
didn't see anything go into the water or come out of the water, but they saw the waters kind of roiling. It
right,
looked like there was something underneath disturbing the water.
right.
It absolutely could have been more Tic Tacs or something else under the water as well that they just didn't witness at the time. Kind of intriguing. The rest of my comment, I will copy and paste from my earlier comment because it's the exact same problem, right? It's the exact same thing. You
Yes,
have you have these UAP. They're demonstrating advanced flight dynamics. They're not leaving any radar, visual, or thermal signatures that match stuff that we're aware of. They've got it on multiple data or multiple sensor logs, right? So they send it off. They submit it through standard reporting channels. It just disappears, right?
right. Yep.
Like this it's to the point of ridiculousness that this just can't keep happening. We need better reporting systems and better feedback systems and better guidance. And I think that's what the UAP hearing is about, right? That's the whole point of the hearing is what the hell are we supposed to do with this stuff? It keeps happening and you keep leaving our guys hanging.
Right.
And one of these days something bad is going to happen and it's going to be on the heads of the people who could have fixed the system and just didn't have the balls to do it, right?
I could not agree more. That is a really good way of putting that. Johnny, what are your thoughts on it?
So my thoughts are going to be more touching up on a little bit of what you guys have already said. My biggest concern with the reporting aspect is there's a lot of deterrence, especially on the aviation side. My knowledge obviously is more so on the naval aviator side because we hear more reports from them and my, close relation and proximity to stuff with the Navy. Um, but a naval aviator is required to maintain certain amount of training hours, is required to check all these boxes in order to keep their flight status. And pretty much every time they interact with a UAP, they're on a training mission. They're doing training activity. And the moment that they come across these things and they choose to then report it, well, this is no longer a training mission. This is an operations mission. And all of that training hours, everything that they were working on, they're losing their training time. And now there's a problem of, well, am I going to get this training hour back? Am I going to get this time back? Am I going to do this? All this flight maintenance, everything that goes into that.
Mhm.
And so these pilots are deterred from reporting due to the nature of, I'm losing out on this and I'm going to lose my flight status for all these other reasons. So if their command has a problem with the idea or the existence of UAP, that just gives them more fuel to ground these guys, and there's not a lot of protections for them. And I know there are things in the works that have been put forward to correct that problem, but we still aren't really seeing an actionable sign that that's occurring. And then kind of going back to a little bit of what John said is, you know, this all matters and these people are getting kind of screwed over. That's really what I got.
Yeah, very, very well said. Roger, how about you? What's your takeaway from what Mr. Wiggins had to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to reiterate what all of you guys have said and looking at I so I think one thing that we've talked about on the show before, and I know all of us have talked about it together offline, but especially when doing an investigation and coming up with different scientific hypotheses and stuff, you have to have repeatability. And this just shows, again, another repeatable event that matches another event with the same, the transmedium Tic Tac or UAPs exhibiting the exact same type of flight behavior, things that, as far as we know, we don't have the technology far beyond what anything that we can do. And so, I mean, I'm 100% with Jonny here. I can't even imagine what these pilots are going through that witness these things and having to choose between like, hey, this is a national security thing. We don't know what these things are. They're out flying us. We're on a training mission. Should I report it or do I just say, you know what, screw it? It's not worth the time and the hassle to report this, right? Because it's detrimental to me. It's detrimental to my family, my career. And these people should not have to be put in those positions. So I 100% agree with everything that you guys have said. And we do need to do better for our men and women in uniform that are experiencing these very real items and UAPs that are happening, and have happened across time here. So I just think we're in the age of a really good age of documentation. And so we are now being able to capture a lot of this stuff. But it just goes back to the fact that we need more transparency and we need to humanize what's going on and not be threatening to people. So
Yeah,
If I can interject back into for a second, sorry.
absolutely.
You just kind of brought back to my memory some discussions I've had with commercial airline pilots. And this is a subject we don't really think a lot about. We kind of forget about our commercial airliners. Those pilots have even worse repercussions if they report.
Right.
yeah,
I've discussed this with several people who I know who are pilots in the airlines, retired and active, and they have seen things, but they do not report
Yep.
because they will essentially lose their job.
Lose their job. Yeah. Yeah.
they'll be grounded.
And that's one of the reasons, folks, why I am so supportive of the work that Ryan Graves is doing with his Americans for Safe Aerospace organization that he's doing, because he is really trying to get that whole paradigm changed. It started to change in the military to where there's not as much of a stigma. I think you'll probably find there's still remnants at best. There's still plenty of remnants of a stigma there in the military as far as reporting goes, but even more so on the civilian aviation side of things. And I know that's one of the things that Ryan Graves and his colleagues are trying to undo and to re-educate the folks in the civilian side of aviation to get it changed to where there's not a stigma. Because now, I mean, seriously, what is holding them back? Their own government has come clean and said, yes, the phenomenon is real. The government still doesn't, admit to knowing or having any idea of what the phenomena is, but at least the government is saying that what you're reporting, what you're seeing, it is real. These are tangible, real objects that you're seeing. So why it hasn't quite carried over into the civilian sector is concerning to me, especially considering how often I fly on commercial flights and stuff like that, as I'm sure all of us do. Because it seems anytime I fly anywhere, John Nyberger is flying to the same place. but but yeah, it's deeply concerning, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jonny, because the civilian side of things has greater implications than I think the military does, just because of how the number of commercial flights absolutely overshadows anything that the military is doing as far as sheer volume of flights on any given day. So yeah, it's very important that we break that stigma down in the civilian sector as well as in the military sector. So thank you very much for bringing that point up. So that brings us to our third witness that testified at the hearing, and that is somebody a name that all of us and all of our subscribers should be familiar with, and that is Mr. George Knapp, the legend himself, Mr. UFO. And George Knapp has been an investigative journalist for KLAS TV in Las Vegas, Nevada for, I want to say, pushing 35, 40 years. He's been there a long time. He is an award-winning journalist, a Peabody award-winning journalist, which is one of the highest honors that a investigative journalist can receive, is the Peabody Award. So George Knapp has got a very, very commendable track record as far as being an investigative journalist goes. He covered all kinds of breaking stories in the Las Vegas area, going clear back to the days when the mafia was still in control of Las Vegas. And so he's no stranger to investigating the really, really difficult and somewhat dangerous topics, if you will. And of course, where George Knapp's involvement in all of this comes in is back in 1989. He did the first interview with a gentleman who at first was only named Dennis, was how he wanted himself to be referred as. And of course, this was the story of a worker who allegedly worked out at Area 51, and we all know where Area 51 is, and claimed to be working on UFO technology that the government had retrieved, and he was trying to back engineer it, and he specifically was trying to figure out the propulsion system on these retrieved UFOs. So it turns out that this gentleman named Dennis was actually, his real name was Bob Lazar, and that is a name that most of us that follow this topic should also be fairly familiar with. And so that kind of began George Knapp's sojourn, if you will, on to where we are today. George, depending on who you talk to, is the man responsible for the legitimate side of a lot of these UAP events. George was kind of the guy to bring them to the forefront. Now, he's been doing it at least as long, if not longer, than Dr. Stephen Greer has. And he's been engaged in it for, like I said, multiple decades. And all of us have had the pleasure of meeting George Knapp at least once and getting a chance to talk to him. And George he's a very nice guy, but he's also kind of like when I met him, he was all business. It was not really kind of laid back and easygoing, but that could have also been because I know that he had been flying and traveling a lot the day that I met him. So it's understandable why he might not have been in the best of moods. But right now, currently, George Knapp is the co-host of, Jeremy Corbell's Weaponized podcast right here on YouTube, which I do recommend that you guys check it out. They do have some interesting content on there. Jeremy Corbell is a little bit different from George in the way he approaches things, and we've talked about that in the past. But George Knapp, he's the one guy that wasn't in the military that was on this panel. So, John, I think you've got a pretty good summary of the things that George talked about. So, do you mind just giving us a quick synopsis of what Mr. Knapp had to say to the hearing board?
Well, I'm actually the one who didn't pay that much attention to what George Knapp said.
Oh, okay.
I think it was Jonny that did.
Jonny, okay. Jonny,
just a maybe.
Okay.
Maybe, just a maybe. I want to say something real quick, though. I do have a comment, though. I think George got the Peabody Award. The Peabody Award is completely different. I think that's like when you're at a restaurant and someone says, "Hey, does anyone else have to go pee?" That's the There's a Peabody Award.
It's pronounced Peabody. Peabody. Okay.
I think the Peabody Award is achieved by the ultimate bro who holds it for you when you're too drunk. I think that's what I've heard.
And that reminds me of the commercial. Some I think it was like alcohol commercial that was made, where a bunch of guys go in and do the exact same thing that we're talking about. But I digress. So,
well, you got to finish. What's the rest of the story?
I'm staying out of this one, guys. I'm hands off.
I'll tell you
my Fifth Amendment privilege.
I will look that up and send it to you guys later offline.
This will be part of the classified edition.
Yes,
All
Right.
right.
This is
yes.
the after
But
show.
yeah, so John, did you want to get into George or you want me to do a little bit?
Hello,
Sorry,
I
Mr.
think
hang,
you,
sorry.
Can we hear you, George? There you go.
I have AirPods in, and they keep disconnecting, and it's really
Ooh,
bugging me. Yeah, it's annoying. It didn't happen last week, but yeah, this week it's like that's the second time they've done it while we've been talking. Yeah, they just decide to just quit working, and then I can't hear. I
you think
think you can still
Skinwalker.
hear me, but yeah, exactly. Skinwalker Ranch has infected my AirPods. Damn it, Travis.
So, do you have a comment you wanted to make on Nap before
I do
Johnny?
not.
Okay,
Nope.
Johnny,
all
take it
right.
away.
All right. So obviously I pay a lot of attention to George. George is going to be the one that I learned the most from our dear friend Micah Hanks. If it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have heard a lot of this. But some of the stuff he discussed about, different crash retrieval programs. He's discussed, oh geez, a plethora. I have notes here, FOIA requests on the paper trails of all of this, but the one thing that he said that I think made the most impact, at least in my opinion, on what he discussed, is about Fitzpatrick and Arrow. And I might need to put my ballistic helmet on because I might come under fire for saying this, but
The
you know,
honorable
yes,
Sean Kirkpatrick.
right. Um, Arrow
Speaking
seems
of
more like a
Peabody Awards,
counterintelligence thing, right? He probably has one of those.
I think he probably does.
Maybe. But, he discussed how Arrow is more like a counterintelligence operation, and it seems like those parts of the government we've discussed, and he made mention of as well during the hearing, of people who are trying to put these topics down, that are trying to use that pen to do away with the research and the studies of the UAP and the government. It seems like he is more an enemy to disclosure than he is in favor of it. And yet, a lot of people in the media and himself champion them as this, bastion of disclosure, this person who's going to
If
push this
anybody
stuff.
would know, it would be Dr. Kirkpatrick because he was the top guy at Arrow. So yeah, I have to believe what he says.
Precisely. And,
Excellent
Arrow has
impersonation.
come off as as this, putting everything down problem. And I think that really needed to be said in that kind of setting, just to put more public attention to the problems that we have in the UAP community within government. And, that's majority of what I've got. And we might come under fire for saying some negative things there about Arrow, but it's true. It's not like the UAP task force that existed prior. They aren't really protecting people the way they should, and we need to take a real serious look at how we're doing things at the federal level.
Absolutely. I uh, I I I think that George probably has more UFO and UAP data, not just for our country, but even for the Soviet Union, the old
Hmm.
Soviet Union, than probably anybody on Earth. I mean, he's got to have like, if there's an archive, his archive is probably more impressive than the actual top secret archives that our nation allegedly has on these legacy
The Vatican
programs.
has to request access to his archives. That's how big his
Exactly.
archives are.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things I love about George, and one of the biggest things I appreciate about him is he didn't come into this as a UFO believer. He didn't come into this as somebody who was, steadfast. This is real. This is the case. The Bob Lazar stuff kind of just fell into his lap, and he almost became that guy. So he
Mhm.
didn't go out seeking these things originally. He didn't try to make this part of his career. It's just he kind of became the guy, kind of like somebody that we talked about a couple times that, he may have interviewed on his Weaponized podcast. I might have the same last name as that guy. I don't, what was his name?
You might have the
uh,
same similar. Well, do you have the same
Right.
first? You don't have the same first name, actually, do you?
Not quite.
Technically, no, not quite. Yep.
Same
But yeah,
initials.
same
yes, indeed.
initials. But yeah, just
We
like my
both go by
father, he
Fluffy.
did not come into it for being some staunch believer in that this is his life mission is to seek UFO stuff. So
Right.
his his background in that is something I admire, but more than anything, going to his archive is his journalistic integrity. I can't think of anybody that has more journalistic integrity than George does. He protects his sources like no other. He does not leak information willy-nilly.
Mhm.
He puts a lot of time and energy into every little thing that he puts out because he wants to protect his sources. And
Yep.
that's something we don't see in the UAP world enough.
Yep.
And it's sad that we have to do that.
Yeah. No, I put George Knapp and somebody like Micah Hanks on the, Micah is another person that obviously I'm going to be biased because he's not only my bandmate and my friend, but he's uh, that whole phrase that you just said, Johnny, journalistic integrity, is
Mhm.
everything in this. And George Knapp, just because of the nature of what he does for his day job, and again, he is not the UFO guy at KLAS TV. You tune in to George's program, and he's taking on everybody from the mafia to, the gambling casinos, the gaming commission, stuff that Las Vegas citizens have to deal with. If there's a story and it deserves to be investigated, George Knapp is going to be on the case of investigating whatever that particular issue is. And
Yep.
like you said, it just was by happenstance that the UAP issue fell into his lap with the Bob Lazar story back in 1989. So, uh, but it's because George has that credential and he has that track record. If George tells you something, you better pay close attention to it because he's vetted his sources better than most people will. And
Mhm.
George has been at it so long, he knows where the pitfalls are. He has seen, the I guess the duplicity, I guess you would say the just the shenanigans, I guess is the polite way to
Right.
say it, that goes
I do
on.
think there is a recent pitfall that he has fallen into, though, that we have discussed before.
Could be.
Immaculate
Please.
Constellation.
Yes.
Ah,
Yes. Could.
I think
Yes.
I think that's one that he has gotten wrong. But I
John, you need
wanted to
to take a drink.
you know what? I forgot my whiskey. Dang it. I've got this awesome old man liver whiskey that is so good. And your dad's
You,
like, it was his. He's like, I'm not gonna fly home with this. Do you want it? I'm like, sure, I'll try it. That stuff is
I'm
good, man.
glad you liked
But
it because I did not care for that particularly.
really, I like it. But anyway, I wanted to interject something super fast, kind of tangential, but Jim brought it up. Micah Hanks. I would take it a step further and say that I know, based on knowing Micah Hanks, if he says something, I trust it more than if George Knapp says it. And that just shows you how, because I respect the hell out of George freaking Knapp,
Mhm.
except
Hmm.
for the Immaculate Constellation stuff, which I think they're wildly wrong about.
Mhm.
With that caveat, I respect the hell out of the guy. Dude's been doing this for years. The guy is a for real, serious journalist. Um, Micah Hanks is the shit. Like that guy. I mean, we've seen him in person, and I don't know why we're going off on this tangent. But I just feel like pumping up
It's an
brother
earned
Micah,
tangent.
brother Hanks. That dude, seriously, he is so thorough, so neutral, tries to be as unbiased as possible, and vets his sources better than any journalist I've ever seen. Like if he's not sure about something and if he hasn't vetted something, it's not getting printed. And if
Yep.
you look at their website, which again, folks, the debrief.org, it's probably the most neutral website I've ever seen that does journalism.
Mhm.
They don't push any sort of angle. They're just reporting the facts and telling us some interesting stuff. And then,
And
anyway,
on the
I just wanted to
topic of
say that.
journalistic integrity with Micah, to give him the biggest pat on the back is off the record is off the record. Like the things that you can talk about with him, it's never going to see the light of day unless he has your expressed permission that this can see the light of day. You
Mhm.
can talk about anything. I mean, I bet people could come forward to him with war crimes, and even though he'd want to give that out, he's not going to because he has that same thing that we talked about with George Knapp, and that's the journalistic integrity of a saint.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's absolutely 100 out of 100, top notch, inviolable. That dude is freaking fantastic.
And the man can play guitar like the meanest motherfucker I've ever seen. So
And he
absolutely.
can, yeah,
Micah
he's a
Hanks, not George
great
Knapp.
guy.
I can't speak to George Knapp's guitar skills.
I don't
So
think, does George even play an instrument?
I
I believe he does.
I don't know. I don't know. Yep. Roger,
Stay
Wow, we
any
have
tuned.
gone off tangent.
any
Or
any
gone
Yes, let's
off
hear Roger.
topic.
Roger, any thoughts on George Knapp?
Save us, Roger. Get us back on
Oh,
track.
wow. George Knapp. No, George Knapp's a really cool guy, and I think that I mean, just kind of wrap up what he said. I think was really good. Because in essence, as part of his opening statement, he said, the public has been told over and over since the late 40s, and that's the 1940s. There's nothing to worry about here. These mysterious crafts seen by millions of people in the skies, oceans, over land are not real. They're not a threat. The witnesses are wrong. They're crackpots. Don't believe it. And then he goes on to say that changed for me. What got me hooked is the paper trail. So documents that were squeezed out of the US government after the Freedom of Information Act became the law of the land. And those documents paint a much different picture than what the public, the press, and Congress have been told over many years. The documents from military and intelligence personnel behind closed doors admit that these things are real. They're not fictitious. They can fly in formation, they're evasive, and they outperform any aircraft known to exist, including ours. The public, of course, as he said, has been told something much different. So I just think that it basically sums up what you guys said about George Knapp, that as an investigative journalist, he has done his homework and he went after that paper trail and he has put together this narrative, again, based on the facts coming out of, from the Freedom of Information Act, that we do have UAPs and that the government, for the longest time has said nothing here. And cheers. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think George is a great guy, and does he always get it right? No, I don't think any of us. We're all human, we have our biases and whatnot. But I think he's done more to be at the forefront of pushing this knowledge forward and getting it out there in the mainstream media than probably anybody. He's done a hell of a job, in my opinion, in bringing this forward. And he's not afraid to take again, right? I think a lot of investigative journalists or people of that mindset would be afraid to tackle the UAP, UFO topic because
Yeah,
again, there's that stigma. It's like, oh my gosh, that's how's that going to ruin my career? And instead, he has run with it. And again, I think he's a person of integrity. So
Yep.
yeah, and I would say the same for Micah Hanks. That man is an amazing. And I'll put a shout out there for Caleb as well. He's one hell of a drummer. And he is the funniest, one of the funniest people I know. So
Caleb is the wind beneath my wings.
I thought you were going to say the wind, something else, but oh,
Well, you never know.
good save, good save. No, the only other thing that I'll say to wrap up with George Knapp is that he was supposed to be presenting at Phenomicon this last year with his coast to coast AM broadcasting partner George Norrie, and of course we were informed on the very first day of Phenomicon that George Knapp would not be appearing. And we learned, obviously, the reason he wasn't going to be at Phenomicon was because he was getting ready to testify before the House Oversight Committee at this particular UAP hearing. So kind of cool to be connected to that in some way with the four of us there at Phenomicon that were supposed to see George Knapp. So instead of George Knapp introducing Hitchhiker this year, we had Dragon, which was every bit as cool because I'm a big fan of Dragon, love Dragon. So,
Love that guy.
but so the next one that we had was the next witness was Dylan Borland, a Air Force officer who had his own particular UAP incident and experience that he had personally. And before we dive into Dylan Borland, and Jonny, we're going to lean on you or Roger to talk about Dylan Borland and his background and what he had to say. But the one thing I want to talk about regarding Dylan Borland, and we talked about this in the green room before we started recording today, But the one thing that I noticed about Dylan Borland, more so than anybody else that was on the witness stand that day at the hearing, is that he looked genuinely uncomfortable to be there. It looked like he was, for want of a better word, a little bit scared of being there and saying what he was saying. You could hear it in his voice. You could just kind of see he looked really, really nervous. He was doing something that I think he was extraordinarily uncomfortable doing, but he went ahead and did it anyway. So to that aspect alone, I tip my hat off to him because, you know, I generally don't have a problem if I have to speak in public, but testifying before Congress again about something that could potentially, have long-standing ramifications for your retirement from the military and your benefits that you receive. So let's take that moment then and talk a little bit about Dylan Borland, and then I want to come back to that aspect and see if the three of you noticed what I also noticed in Dylan's behavior, or if you think I was just seeing things. So, Jonny, do you have anything on Dylan Borland to read to us or to tell us about?
Yeah, so the incident that he discussed primarily was in 2012 while he was at Langley Air Force Base. He witnessed a triangular craft, which is a very commonly reported sighting of a dark triangle that doesn't have any obvious control surfaces and moves in a way that's unnatural. So he saw it about 100 feet or so, equilateral. He was very specific about saying it was an equilateral triangle that he saw. And then he mentioned that it made zero noise, started up only, a few hundred feet, and then it had moved to commercial aviation levels in near fractions of a second. But to your point about how uncomfortable he looked, wow, you are not kidding. He looked really uncomfortable. But there's reasons behind why he was so uncomfortable. And, I don't know the guy personally, I haven't discussed it with him, but from what I understand about his experiences, he has suffered severe harassment and his career essentially was ended due to this, so to speak, of, he didn't want to be in the military anymore due to the level of negative treatment he received for his reporting, for his experience. And, he overall just had a problem with the institutional stigma and lack of support there. And I understand why he's uncomfortable. Who knows what could have happened to him prior to this meeting, because everybody knows as soon as somebody's listed as meeting for Congress or with Congress to testify, people in suits can show up, crazy people can show up. Who knows? He might have even gotten contacted by his previous superiors and colleagues, and we won't know unless he comes out and discusses it. But he looks like he is somebody that has been threatened, harassed, and it's all
That's
around not okay.
that's exactly the body language that I detected, but without even knowing his backstory at all, just from other people that I know of that have been bullied and been harassed, that have received death threats. There's a certain aura and energy about those kind of people, and having
Yep.
having been through some of that myself, I can usually pick up on it pretty quickly, and that was you just perfectly said what I was trying to enunciate and articulate what it was that I thought that I saw in his body language. So,
Maybe
Yeah.
Sean Kirkpatrick showed him his Peabody Award right before he walked in the hearing.
no, Sean Kirkpatrick
Kind of freaked
was
him
his
out.
Peabody, and that's why yeah,
Right.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
was in
But he
shock. He was
has
traumatized.
been harassed and treated poorly for it, so who
Yeah.
knows the extent.
What
And
what
it wouldn't
what's
surprise
interesting?
me if Kirkpatrick was one of them. Sorry, Roger.
Yeah, no,
Go
no.
ahead,
I'm just
Raj.
saying what I find interesting in his actual written testimony um, is that so he states that some years after he experienced that, he was further exposed to classified information from the UAP Legacy Crash Retrieval Program through a sensitive position he held within SAP During this time, intelligence officers approached me in fear for their own careers, citing misconduct within these programs and the same retaliation I was already enduring. And then he goes on to talk about some of that. And I mean, this is crazy stuff right here. Like, of course he was scared, and of course, like, he has PTSD. So these issues included medical malpractice by the Veterans Affairs staff, denial of work I performed while enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, forged and manipulated employment documents, workplace harassment, including colleagues being directed not to speak with me, and manipulation of my security clearance records by certain agencies to block or delay my access to classified employment. And then he's like, the retaliation I faced and the retaliation against individuals I know who work in these programs is what convinced me in March of 2023 to become a whistleblower. I came forward out of concern for people's lives and to ensure I did everything I could do to let our elected representatives know the truth about what is really happening within the executive branch. That's a powerful statement.
That's a
It's
really
testimony like that that makes me think that heads need to roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
People need to be
Oh,
fired.
totally agree.
100%.
and this is what we get when I guess decades of these programs that have no accountability, that have no oversight, no congressional oversight. Um, and that's one of the things that I think is probably at the root cause of why this stuff is staying buried as deeply as it is, even though we now have people, multiple people from very credible backgrounds, all testifying of essentially the same thing, the same kind of experiences of the this retaliation, if you will, this intimidation, and in some cases threatening of their lives are being threatened by some of these agencies that are protecting all of this information. Um, so yeah, this was the first time, because when Grush gave his testimony, it still remains an amazing testimony that Grush gave. And when he talked about the intimidation and talked about the threats that he had received and the threats that he had heard about that others had come to him about, he did it in a very calm and professional manner. But Borland, again, I'm telling you folks, if you haven't watched the video yet of his testimony, please go back and watch it and you'll see exactly what I mean. He is clearly, it's you can tell it's taken every bit of strength and fortitude that he has to be able to say the things that he's saying. And that to me, folks, is the definition of somebody that we need to support and applaud and see to it that this guy and people like him get the protection that they need from these organizations that are trying to retaliate for doing the darnest thing, telling the truth, right? I mean, why should it come at such a high price? But yet it does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the root problems that we're dealing with in this overall picture of the UAP phenomenon. So I was really that was one of my biggest takeaways, was watching his body language throughout the entire hearing. So thank you, Jonny, and thank you
Yeah.
Roger for that.
One of the big questions that I have, and I think we all have as an American public, is what were the things that these people who threatened him so concerned about coming out? What sort of bad actions did they take? What sort of illegal activity? What is so bad that they would threaten and harass this person so badly?
Right.
What
Right.
occurred? And that needs to be discussed likely in a classified briefing.
Most likely. In fact, I think that's also why we're hearing more whispers of there needs to be some kind of amnesty or immunity granted for people that are currently inside those programs that want to come forward and truly spill all the beans. Immunity from prosecution for quite obviously very illegal activity, potentially, the highest of the highest crimes and misdemeanors that we hear of in the Constitution. So my guess is that if some of those legends and stories that we've heard in the past, to the extent that some of the cover up has gone to maintain secrecy, the only way I think you're going to get through that is to have somebody that's on the inside right now that not only can come forward as a whistleblower, but say, okay, here's the documents, here's the video, and then you have to grant, the only way to do it is to grant them amnesty and immunity from prosecution, and it's got to offer it for a limited time. But even then, is pride going to allow some of these people to say, okay, I'm not going to go to prison, I'm not going to go to jail for it, but how is it going to make me, how it's going to make my personal legacy look for my family to know that I was engaged in, these activities that were so blatantly unconstitutional and illegal. And that's a whole other topic, a whole other rabbit hole that we can go down. But yeah, it's like that old saying, oh, what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive, right? And
Beautifully said.
We're just now starting to see all of that start to boil to the surface, and it'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here in that regard. Any other thoughts about Borland before we move on to our last witness? Alrighty. So our next one, his last name was Spielberger. Is that right? I think so. Maybe. Could be wrong.
Yeah,
think
the oversight special counsel,
Joe
oversight counsel,
Spielberger.
Joe Spielberger. Yeah.
Okay, Roger, tell us a little bit about Mr. Spielberger.
Oh my gosh, you put me on the spot here.
I did.
Let me pull him
It's
up
like a
here.
You
pop
didn't know
quiz.
there was going to be a
Jim's
pop
like
quiz,
a
did you?
teacher. Yeah, he's tossing
didn't.
pop
I
quizzes
didn't.
at us like we're in middle school. We're unprepared. Jim is a mean guy.
I'm a
He
bastard,
just
yes.
so no, I'll just again, like I'm really glad that they had multiple witnesses and people talking about it. And I think that like just from his testimony, I think one of the things that really stood out to me is just him talking about the historic importance of whistleblowers and people being able to come forward when there are wrongs happening and being able to report that and being having that protected. I think, and all of us have talked about that before, and even during this podcast, it's something that I think that you know powerful organizations and governments are afraid of, right? They like to intimidate and cause fear and retaliate because they know that if people come forward with information, right, it could shed light on things that aren't on the up and up or things that they don't want disclosed. So I just think that him coming forward and ultimately, I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on it, but him being, a senior policy counsel, understanding on that side of just, the whole transparency, the declassification of federal, secrets, whistleblower protection. I just think he had a lot to bring in talking about how we can help whistleblowers and what kind of legislation and type of things that we need to hold people accountable and also help people be safe and feel encouraged that they can report these things and not have retaliation against them. So that's probably what I would say overall, just around his testimony. So.
That makes sense, and it would seem, if you really want to drive home the importance of better protection for whistleblowers, like they're trying to get in the most recent UAP DA bill that they're trying to push through Congress right now, which is now starting to get some pushback from the Senate. No surprise, the senators that are pushing back are, some of their biggest donors are some of their biggest donors, I should say, donator. Where did that word come from? I just made up a word, but some of their biggest donors are defense contractors, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that some of these senators that are, already planning on voting no on the UAPDA is they're starting to see that happen. So hopefully the amendment will pass. But again, the importance of protecting these whistleblowers, making sure that they are free from any kind of retaliation and reprisal is such a crucial thing to getting the next step. And so, unless somebody wants to add something about Spielberger, let's talk about what the next step should be, or that we think we would like to see in these hearings. And for me, I think where it needs to go to really truly shake the public awake in some regard, because these hearings are great. They are still basically, it's kind of like the data gathering that we're seeing on Skinwalker Ranch. We're seeing all kinds of really extraordinary and fascinating things going on, but we still don't have anything conclusive other than to say it's real. Whatever it is, it's real, it's tangible, we can see it. There's clearly something quote unquote real to all of this. And a lot of the public are still completely ignorant of that. There's a lot of people out there that are not as well tuned in as the four of us are, and as most of our subscribers are, that still consider the UAP and UFO topic to be fringe, whereas it really hasn't been since 2017. And it is gaining more traction in the mainstream media, which is nice to see. But I think where it needs to go from here is exactly what some of the diehard UAP and UFO guys are calling for, which is we need to get somebody that was hands on in these programs. Not, I know a guy or I know these programs exist because I saw the documents. We need to get somebody that was actual hands on, that was either working on reverse engineering these craft that were recovered, or that were reverse engineering technology that we got that's not from an adversary and not from an ally. We need to see what they call firsthand eyewitness, firsthand whistleblowers, people that have hands-on experience in these alleged programs. Um, Better yet, if they can bring some kind of a physical evidence with them in the form of photographs or videos, but that opens up a whole can of worms of, leaking out classified material and whatnot. So, unfortunately, the real meaty things that we wanted to learn, some of these guys that were testifying this last time could have provided that, but they can't provide it in an open session of Congress. They would have to do it in a skiff. And of course, that's precisely what Tim Gallaudet and Lou Elizondo, David Fravor, David Grush, Ryan Graves. I mean, they all have information, classified information that they can talk about, but they can't talk about it in an open session of Congress. They'd have to do it in a secure location in a skiff. So there's, where these hearings go from here, it's hard to say, but I think there needs to be more substance instead of more. Yeah, I saw a UFO while I was working in this official capacity for this agency. There needs to be somebody that was hands on. They saw this. They were, that's my thought of where it needs to go next. So let's go down the road here. Jonny, what are your thoughts? Where do you think these hearings need to go next? What's the next progression, the next evolution in these hearings?
A perfect world. I love the idea of being able to put all this information out there, have zero classification, put it out there for the American public and the world to see. I do, however, see the national security value of some of the classification aspects just due to the nature of the systems that we use, that we capture data regarding these things. We can't let our adversaries know just what our capabilities are for, our scanning, our detection. So I do understand that. I also understand where a lot of these uh, contractors that are developing new weapons and craft and all these different materials for national defense, I understand why they don't want to have the transparency aspect as well, because then that would have some level of legal requirement to say, this is ours, this is a matter of national security. You don't see anything behind this curtain. And they don't want that either. They like to have that ability of when they're testing an aircraft or some other technology, that there's oh, we don't know what it is. We can't say what it is. It could be paranormal. It could be aliens. We don't know. They like to have that aspect for their own protection. So I do understand where both sides are coming from, and I see the value on both ends. So I find myself torn in the middle of those two ideas. It would be great for us to get this new UAP legislation out. It would be amazing due to the nature of the protections for people who are whistleblowers or coming forward with information, protection for reporters through the chain of command. There's all that stuff that's great. The problem just is that transparency aspect. What I'd really like to see is we get a new version of the UAPTF, the Arrow, all of this stuff. Get it all sorted out by people who know what they're doing, people who want to actually find an answer and preserve not only our national security, but also disclose the information when possible. We need to get those people in because we just don't have that. We have too many people that are trying to cover things up, protect themselves, protect their stock portfolios, all of that. It's just unacceptable. And there's no place for that in public office with Congress, and there's zero place for that in the military. We have to be able to defend this nation and defend the world.
Absolutely. Well said. Amen, brother. John, how about you? Where does the evolution of these hearings, where should it go next?
Well, I want to touch on something you said before about the public. You're right. The problem right now is that by and large, we're dealing with politicians. You know, all of this is in the hands of politicians. Politicians, for the most part, are self-interested political shills who really only care about themselves and whatever political party they belong to. And while I do appreciate that this particular topic has a lot more bipartisan support, or at least I should say, is more bipartisan than most other topics, which is fantastic.
Yes.
Um, I think they're all still, they can't stop being politicians. So they're always thinking about how is it going to affect them. They're still listening to the people that have the money. They're still listening to the big donors. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that stops this stuff from ever getting passed and getting real reform. What I think are going to need, which is completely out of any of our hands, is another Phoenix Lights type of event, except in modern times with cell phones. You have a mile wide freaking flying triangle, 1,000 feet or whatever above a city like Denver or Washington, D.C. or L.A. or wherever. You do that now, do it again in Phoenix. I don't care. Do that now, and you're going to get the public support. You're going to get thousands and thousands of people calling their Congress critters and saying, we need some action on this. Right now, no one cares. You've got inflation, you've got layoffs, you've got political unrest, you've got uh, the list goes on and on and on and on
Right.
of things that people are worried about that are way above what the government knows about UAP and NHI or anything else like that. We care, but we are in a niche little group. We are in a bubble.
Right.
Outside of the bubble, no one cares. So I think until we may be kind of stuck. Well, I mean, we're making progress, no doubt. We're making good progress, but it's very small incremental progress.
Yeah.
I don't think we will make big progress until the public at large is finally at the point where they're like, oh crap, yeah, we need to bump this issue up a few notches in priority and get something done. Because until the public pushes it, the politicians they don't have a lot of incentive. I mean, there's the national security side,
Right.
and there's taking care of doing right by our members of the military.
Mhm.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, but that only goes so far. I don't know. That's my thought.
No, and that brings up a big point that a lot of people say is that one surefire way to bring about disclosure is for the phenomena itself to do just what you said, do another Phoenix Lights or some area, some kind of incident where there's a mass sighting, where you've got
Hmm.
thousands of people that witness the same exact thing, capture it from different, angles on video and high definition video, high definition photography, and better yet, if it's also captured on multiple sensors. But that's
Hmm.
it's a very, very valid point that you make, and I would
Maybe
have
that's what they
to.
call catastrophic disclosure.
Yes.
We've heard that term
Well,
before. I don't know what it means exactly, but that might be one type.
to
Catastrophic.
add a little bit,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
To add a little bit to what John's saying is every member of the public has the ability to record with the current technology of phones. Every member of the public has access to being outside. And to quote a pretty wise man, always look up.
Mhm.
You never know what you're going to see.
Yeah, very, very true. Roger, what are your thoughts? Where does the next step in evolution of these hearings? Where does it need to go in your eyes?
Well, I think the one of the things kind of to combine the thoughts that you guys have been talking about is that I think, as a public, even though we're a niche group and whatnot, we need to continue to contact our representatives. We need to keep it in the open. We need to contact. I mean, even if it's just getting out there and doing podcasts like this or posting in blogs and things like that. We need to try to help the media keep attention on this. John, to your point earlier, with all of there's so many things going on in the world. It's very, very easy that this type of topic, because it doesn't necessarily impact you physically day after day, right? You've got more immediate needs, how am I going to pay rent or my mortgage? How am I going to eat? Jobs, kids, school, all of that, right? And that's the reality we live in. But I think it's important that we who care about this topic continue to push it forward and continue to be like-minded, and that we can't, like, I think it needs to accelerate. And I know that there are forces, inside of our government or whatnot that are trying to put the brakes on that and do what they can to put disinformation out there. But I think, again, I would love to see this continue to, as Johnny, you said, we get more and more information. Of course, we want to protect our classified secrets and things like that because we want to make sure that our nation is safe. At the same time, because of the things that we don't know, we have to put pressure and we have to keep having these hearings and we have to continue to provide, you know, we have to be willing to stand up as an American public, and our elected representatives have to know that we need to protect whistleblowers. We need legislation that will help bring transparency. And so the next step logically for me is that we continue to fight the fight. We talk to our representatives, we make our voices known, and we don't let ourselves be intimidated or pushed away or silenced, because once we surrender to that, then the topic goes away and it'll be really hard to get that going again.
Preach it, Brother Stokes. I feel like I just went to church.
Hallelujah, and the saints be praised.
100%.
Yes. Yeah. No.
To clarify a little bit, contact your local representatives in an intelligent and as without stigma or conspiracy sounding as you can possibly be. Approach it intelligently and let your local politicians know that this subject matters to their constituents. That's the
Yeah.
only way that we're going to be able to get this across, as Roger was saying. Contact them and let them know that it matters.
And
And
one
if
of
you've
the
got $100,000 to drop with their super PAC, that'll help too.
Immensely.
yes, but one of the things that I think is also essential, and I may get some pushback from you guys on this, but one of the things that you find that happens with people that don't pay attention to this topic with any consistency is they automatically think that anytime the conversation of UAPs or UFOs comes up, that it automatically means that you're talking about little green men or little gray men.
Right.
When the reality is that's just one possible explanation out of at least a half dozen, if not more. So, one conversation that I had with somebody recently who's very highly educated and pays absolutely zero attention to the topic, and asked me, hey, I hear that there's these congressional UAP hearings. So, like, why are they still harping on that? And then I had to explain to them, well, have you actually paid attention going clear back to, 2023 when David Grush gave his presentation and he admitted to me, no, I was like, I just, I have always considered to be kind of a fringe topic, not worthy of attention. I'm like, well, do you understand that in 2017, the government, you know, New York Times article? And he's like, no, I had no idea. So I had him go look it all up and I sent him down this rabbit hole. And just like it was for me in 2017, prior to 2017, I had a casual interest in UFOs. I mean, I knew about Roswell, I knew about Kecksburg and some of the more prominent, stories and legends, if you will. But and I've always believed that there's life elsewhere in the universe, but I just didn't believe that that life necessarily made its way to Earth. And then that all started to change with 2017 and this amazing rabbit hole that Roger and I have gone down. And if you had told me back in 2016 that I would become the UFO guy, I would have laughed in your face and said, no, no, I'm far too rational and pragmatic of a person, which I know is rich coming from a Raiders fan, but there you have it. So,
We
but
can't all be right.
it's yeah, it's nice, nice, but it's a very difficult step for most people that don't pay attention to this topic to really even feel comfortable talking about because they have their own personal stigma and don't realize that once you start talking about it, it really makes it easier to talk about it and to learn more about it. Because when I sent this guy down the rabbit hole, the guy is now completely interested. And he's like, I had no idea that there was actual military records and declassified records that verify that these things. And I'm like, yeah, so that's why these hearings are happening. And, nobody that's worth paying attention to. I have to add that nobody that's credible and worth paying attention to is saying categorically, "Oh, it's ETs." That's just where our culture has conditioned us to automatically think through decades of fantastic and not so fantastic science fiction films that everything comes from another planet and another star system. Now, again, I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm just saying that's one possible explanation for some of this. But it's a far more complicated, multifaceted issue where some of these things may be inhabitants of this planet that have been here alongside us ever since the beginning and may have even predated our own existence as human beings on this planet. And then you start to get into the whole multidimensional, interdimensional type thing, or the extra temporal, the time traveling aspect of it. So these are all just theories, but I think that's one of the reasons why there's still such a stigma is that people, they've always historically dismissed it as, oh, he believes in the little green men, tinfoil hat. And that's a very real stigma. And, that's how our culture has been conditioned to handle this topic. If you're any kind of rational person, you need to look at it with some modicum of, humor, right? Yeah. But the reality is, again, these things, whatever they are, they're very real. And we're now having to face that reality. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people out there that if one of those mass sighting events that John talked about, if we get another Phoenix Lights events, there's a lot of people who their paradigm of reality is not equipped to handle something like that. Because on that day, those people are going to have their world, their very existence turned inside out and twisted up in all kinds of different directions. And so when that day comes, we have to be patient with these people. And remember that we don't want to make fun of them because we didn't like being made fun of because the shoe's going to be on the other foot because they're going to be going from a non-believer and a dismisser to somebody who has now experienced and has seen this thing and now they know all too well that there's a possibility that they just simply dismissed or never considered. And so I think that's something we always want to bear in mind. I think that's part of the reason for the stigmas. We've just been cultured for so long to treat it as, nothing to be really taken that seriously. But you honestly investigate it, and this is something that categorically needs to be taken seriously, if for no other reason than for aviation and maritime security, as Officer Wiggins talked about in his testimony. And then there's so many other national security implications. And so, but the only what I want to wrap up with is I just want to add one more thing about the hearing before we move on to 3I Atlas. But what I wanted to add, one other big moment for me in the hearing, and we'll take this back to George Knapp. George Knapp was asked by one of the committee members if there was anybody that he knew of that was personally trying to obfuscate the truth from coming out, actively playing a role in, trying to put the kibosh on things and whatnot. And you could tell that George Knapp, for a few seconds, he was hemming and hawing. He's like, do I really want to say it? Do I really, really want to say it? Fuck it, I'm going to say it. And he did. He dropped the name of an individual who UAP, UFO insiders have long heard that this particular individual has played a role in trying to keep the cover up prolonged and might have potentially been engaging in some of these activities of intimidation and so forth. And that name was somebody who works for the CIA, I believe, to this day. And that name is Glenn Gaffney, which is a name that some of you, some of my colleagues here might have heard before. But that for me was a big oh shit moment, an oh shit, did he really say that kind of moment? Did any of you guys pick up on that as well?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what if anything comes of that. But the fact that George Knapp said it and got it on the congressional record is, I think, a pretty significant small victory, but still pretty impressive nonetheless. So there you have it.
Other people. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to.
No, go
But
ahead.
I think some other people have mentioned Gaffney, just not by name.
Right.
Like I think Eric Davis even did once in an interview.
Yeah.
Talking about some OSAP days, transfers of materials,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I have a
Yeah.
suspicion that one of the people he was talking about eventually in that same interview was Glenn Gaffney. I think we've heard at least the looming figure behind the scenes
Right.
before from other people, just not coming out and attaching a name to it. So yeah, it's good to have that name out publicly.
Yep.
And we know for every one name we hear, there is easily 100 that we don't hear.
Yep.
Absolutely. Indeed. So, folks, let's talk about 3I Atlas or 31 Atlas.
Not 31 Atlas. That was my damn mistake. I'm never going to live that down.
My mistake.
No,
my mistake too.
No, because the first time I read it, I didn't have my reading glasses on, and I can't see for crap up close. That's my excuse. And then on the next podcast, Roger Stokes says 3I Atlas. I'm like, oh hell, what have I done? I'll never live it down.
It's your fault, Roger, damn proofreader.
I'm sorry. It's 31. Just kidding. It's 3I. It's 3I. 3I Atlas.
So 3I Atlas, folks, is the interstellar object that is making its way into our solar system and will very soon be coming to a trajectory that will bring it relatively close to Earth. It's going to be going by Mars, I think, next month. And Harvard physicist Dr. Avi Loeb, who heads up the Galileo project, he's a member of the Sol Foundation, very, very, very highly respected scientist, astrophysicist. And he, of course, if you remember, several years ago, there was the other interstellar object, Oumuamua, and Dr. Loeb was noted for putting forward the theory that perhaps Oumuamua may have been a artificial object. In other words, not a piece of a planet or an asteroid, something that got ejected into space and just he said that it exhibited some characteristics that made him think that maybe we should have taken a closer look at this object before it finally made its way back out of our solar system. But it was one of the first detectable interstellar objects that came into our solar system, this Oumuamua. And so, regrettably, they didn't get an awful lot of data on it to conclusively say one way or the other, was it potentially an artificial thing like a scout craft of some kind, or was it just simply, mundane, prosaic uh, bit of space rock, not quite big enough to be not quite the characteristics to make it a comet, but there you go. So with this new one, this 3I Atlas, Dr. Loeb has put forth the same theory that perhaps this object, 3I Atlas, that is currently in our solar system, making its way towards Mars, that it too may also potentially be a artificial object, something that's not naturally occurred. And a lot of people, and John, you know this better than anybody because you and I share the opinion on this. The UFO community, particularly on Twitter, can be a dumpster fire at times. Where
Can be at
where
times.
where I
All the
knew that was
time.
going to be your reaction,
This
John.
is a perpetual condition, Brother Jim.
So what you'll see a lot of times in this UAP community is somebody will put forth an idea and very clearly state this is just a theory. I'm not saying categorically this is what it is. I'm not making a diagnosis or reaching a conclusion in my statement. I'm just saying maybe this is what it could be, which is what Dr. Loeb did. He said, we need to take a closer look at it because, like Oumuamua, there are some things that don't immediately fit into the bucket of what we would expect a comet or something of the sort to be appearing on. And so a lot of people took that and ran with the story and made the headlines. Dr. Avi Loeb says that this 3I Atlas is an alien spacecraft and it's going to be arriving near Earth sometime in October and November of 2025. And this is the alien invasion we have to prepare for. Folks, I shit you not. That's what at least 2 dozen or more internet articles that were shared on Twitter or X, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. These people that just want so desperately to believe that aliens are out there and they're on our way, they're coming to Earth. That's what they said that this 3I Atlas is. Now, again, makes for a great story, right? But where's the truth in it? And the answer, we got a little bit closer to the answer to what that truth may be just a couple of days ago, courtesy of an excellent article in the debrief that was written by what's his name? That guitar guy.
Micah makes.
Micah
Micah Honks.
Micah MF Hanks, yes. So
Yes.
so Micah wrote this great article, a summary of what NASA has been able to determine about this object, and they have finally, according to this article, determined that 3I Atlas is in fact a comet. Why? Because just in the last week or so, they have seen it is now showing that it has a tail, something which it did not have previously in the images that were captured by the various telescopes out there. So now it's showing that it does in fact have a tail, and the coma or the head of the comet is also becoming a little more prominent as the trajectory is drawing closer to Mars, therefore coming closer to Earth. So uh, I'm not going to say categorically that it's been successfully debunked, but that's pretty well the direction that it's looking. Johnny, am I wrong on that?
No, not at all. And I mean, I was pretty sure it was probably going to be a comet pretty early on based off what they said. One thing with comets that we got to think about is as they get closer to more of a heat source, they're going to off gas a little more. So we wouldn't necessarily have a tail as it is in deep space where there's not much heat. So our observations are going to change as our perspective changes. And that's something that we just got to be mindful of. What I would like is I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when Dr. Loeb had found out about what people were saying they said.
Yeah,
Because good God,
yeah,
it's really sad the academic dishonesty of people on Twitter, but it's Twitter, it's the internet. It's no different
exactly.
than Reddit.
Yeah, and anybody that really follows Dr. Loeb knows that what he was just putting forward was just one remote possibility of a theory until they got more data. He always kept saying, we'll see what the data shows. So he never once said, this is categorically it's an alien spaceship that's coming in, it's gonna be here within Earth orbit, and they're gonna invade us. We gotta prepare. Never once did he even intimate that that was a possibility with this three-eye atlas. But Twitter's going to twit, right? Or
What
X is going to do whatever it is they do, and they sure as heck did.
Expound.
Yes, expound, right?
Yes.
what I think is cool about just this discussion about the three-eye atlas, um, just throw the extraterrestrial portion of that out and just focus on the science and what we're learning. What I think is really cool, because we've talked about this, and this happens in science, the phenomenon, we're here to learn, right? And it's really cool to see that most likely this is a comet coming in, but it also shows unusual characteristics beyond what we know of comets, right? So what a fantastic scientific opportunity as this thing gets closer to really study something outside of our solar system that is incredibly old. I think this will give, a huge boost to the science community and astronomy. And right, like there are still things that are out there in the universe that are mysterious, right? And things don't always just fall into that nice little scientific bucket, which is why, you know, Jim, you always said, it's not settled science because science is never settled. It can
Mhm.
grow, it can change due to our understanding. And I think this is one opportunity right here as this thing gets closer to really study it and update our facts and knowledge about how our universe works. So I think it's
Yeah,
it's it's really cool.
perfectly said. Perfectly said. And there is one major revelation that I just got out of this. In fact, John, you're the one that said it. The fact that this comet is outgassing would thereby indicate that there are Taco Bells or Del Tacos in other galaxies and other solar systems because that would account for the outgassing. I mean, that's what happens
Mhm.
to me.
Tacos are evidence of God. That's what we have to say here. There is
There we go.
obviously tacos on other planets.
Yes.
But I would
Excellent
like to
point.
add
Excellent.
something that I have to pose this as a question to you guys. Have we ever had a comet this large, this close to Earth? This is a massive scientific opportunity for us to learn more.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
are you talking about before or after Superman arrived?
Hmm. You know, let's talk to Superman. Let's see if we can get him on next week.
That's the trouble. Try to catch him. I mean, the guy's faster than a speeding bullet. Yes, okay. Failed comedian career. Well, enough of that. We've derailed again. So yeah, Three Eye Atlas. It by all accounts, it does look like it is a comet, a very large comet, and it's going to be approaching Mars within a couple of weeks, along about first or second week of October, and that's about as close as it's going to get to the planet Earth. But because of that, we should get a really good look at it. And I think they even said that it might even be visible in the nighttime sky as it approaches Mars. So that will be something really cool to look for so that we could
Hmm.
step out at nighttime, at least here in Utah anyway, should have a good opportunity to get a good
Oh
look at
yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
Another
The
cool thing
Mars
though,
rover. Oh,
huh?
go
What's
ahead.
that?
I was just going to say the Mars rover should get pictures of it in the nighttime Martian sky as it
right.
passes
Oh,
by.
that's a good idea.
Well, check this out though. There's also, now we know, another comet in the solar system that's coming in from the other side called Swan 25b, and it's going to be kind of passing through this area around the same time as Three Eye Atlas. How cool is that? So we're going to have
So
two
aliens are
freaking comets.
transmitting information between the
Yeah,
ships.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Swan 25B is an alien probe launched by 3I Atlas. No, yeah,
We're just in an
still
intergalactic war, and that's actually a torpedo that's coming to that mothership.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a photon
Yes.
torpedo that was launched long
A
ago.
million years ago.
Yes, a million years ago, and it's in what do they call that? Bulldog mode.
Right.
It's just looking for something to hit now.
Yep.
And we're in the
Yeah, the
well,
Galarlac
actually,
rebellion is
Mars
getting
is
pretty
in the
hefty.
path. Yeah,
Yep.
feel bad for Mars. Sorry,
Exactly.
Mars.
And speaking of Mars, the last topic we have to cover is the news that NASA dropped back among the about the 10th of September or thereabouts of the fact that they have discovered some uh, chemical compounds, I guess is the correct way to frame it, that indicate there's a possibility, not a certainty, not a guarantee, but there is a possibility that there was uh, biodetectable biosignatures that existed at one time on the surface of Mars many, many years ago in the ancient lakes and or rivers that are believed to have existed on Mars back before it lost its atmosphere and suffered whatever kind of calamity it was that turned Mars into the barren landscape that we know it as today. So, uh, interesting news. Again, Twitter and a lot of other internet places interpreted the news to be this big earth shattering. NASA admits that multiple life form signatures have been found on the surface of Mars. Seriously, folks, that's what some of the headlines were saying. Because it's all about clickbait, right? It's all about getting those clicks, right? That's how people monetize their stuff that they do on the internet. Well, unfortunately, the news was not really that extraordinary. But again, the possibility, and they're still going to do some more tests. What they're hoping to do is get some actual rock samples sent back to Earth so that they can do a more thorough analysis and analyzing of the chemical compounds that the Mars rover was able to find. But personally, and I'll just throw this out there as the topic of conversation for you guys, it would not surprise me if there is confirmation of there being remnants of ancient microbial life that once existed on the surface of Mars. And for all we know, maybe it wasn't, native to Mars. Maybe it was from one of the many meteor impacts that happen on the surface of Mars. Because again, there's no atmosphere for meteorites and asteroids to impact the surface of Mars. So, just as is theorized on planet Earth, some of the building blocks of life hit ancient planet Earth in the form of meteorites, and that spawned, these ancient microbes that have, presumably exist throughout the galaxy. And again, we're finding out that maybe it's not quite as a rare thing as we've thought it to be in the past. So, Roger, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on the potential of ancient microbial life being detected on Mars?
So I think with anything and topics like this, I think it's an exciting topic to have, right? Because it opens up the field to debate. And I think that, I mean, this whole podcast and our topic today in the UAP, um, congressional hearings and stuff, that's what people have wondered on Earth for, you know, as many years as Earth goes back and humanity's been here. Are we alone in the universe? Is there life on other planets? And so I think that it's a great article, and I think it's well done by NASA to entertain the possibility. And like we're curious. I mean, humanity should be curious. We should be looking into these things. And I found the article interesting, and I think it's exciting. Again, right? We have to be super cautious about saying like, oh, well, this is definitive. We have found life on Mars, and this is going to change the way we view evolution or the history of humanity and all that kind of stuff. I think again, once if we can get more information back from that and really study it and prove that hypothesis out, I think that would be a great leap forward. I mean, it makes sense to me that, I mean, Earth is just not sitting here in a vacuum in space alone. Um, it would make sense that there are life forms and things on other planets out there because the universe is expanding. There's so much out there. We just have to be able to take that information and verify it through what we understand to continue our knowledge. And I think again, it'll be a forever science experiment, ongoing. That I think that I mean we live in a time in our world where we can make these exciting discoveries and we can be along for the ride and look at what science has to say about it. Is it definitive that there were, life or microbes on there? No idea. But I think it's really cool that the possibility is there that, just like they've talked about some of the moons of Jupiter, where they potentially, if they landed there, there could be, frozen lakes and potential life captured there. We just haven't been able to, get to that. So is the possibility there? Yes, that's what excites me about this article, and I can't wait to see what NASA has and more information we get on it.
Right on. John, how about you?
I don't know if I can add much to that. That's, I mean, it's an interesting discovery, but it's as much as it is, it's not proof of life. It's like it's more like we have found that we had good conditions for life and potential, these potential biosignatures, but and at some point in time, this soil or this material could have supported microbial life. That's pretty cool,
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not the smoking gun.
It's not a smoking gun.
Right.
So we wait. We
Yes.
wait for the monolith and the
Yeah.
voice that says all these worlds are yours, except EO. Attempts no landing there.
I've never heard that voice. I must be missing out. I don't know. Johnny, how about you?
I probably have a very unique perspective on this because I had a different thought entirely about what this could mean of supporting life. And what I thought about with this is, what does this mean for supporting organic life, such as planting of crops, trees, other sort of plant life? And would this then lead to us being able to say that the soil is able to support growth of different kinds of plants? Because if we're ever going to possibly put a colony there, I know people talk about colonizing Mars all the time. Well, that requires planting of food, planting of trees, because you have to have oxygen supply. You can't just sit there and chemically make oxygen constantly. That's a very heavy and intensive process that can fail. So, are we going to be able to grow crops and trees on Mars? That's what I would like to know more about this is, what does the soil actually support? Because if it has the potential to support organic life,
Mhm.
it likely would have the ability to support planting of our, organic matter.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really interesting point. The how that could factor into the potential future colonization of Mars, which, as far as I know, they're still planning on sending a manned crew to Mars sometime in the next 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Right.
As I understand it, Martian soil has a toxic salt that would make our current plant life like just impossible to survive. But
but potato
maybe,
chips, they could grow potato chips because potato chips need salt.
and they could still probably
Yes.
set up a Taco Bell because nothing about that's real. So,
We,
Correct. Well, when it comes to the soil, I mean, there is a good theory that there's certain types of roots and such that can be grown there.
mhm.
Not to go back to movies as being fact, but a lot of the science in the movie The Martian about growing potatoes is not inaccurate.
right.
So I'd
Right.
really like to see what we can do there. And we might have plants here that are capable of surviving in that soil. It'd be great if we sent up samples, if it's possible, and had a rover plant and do something of that nature just as an experiment.
Well, one of the first things they're going to have to plant on Mars is cilantro, right? Because you
Yes,
can't
yes.
you can't you can't do a proper taco without cilantro and onions. They're going to have to plant cilantro and onions, and then yeah, there's
I think
current.
cactus is going to end up being the number one food source of Martians.
You think?
Oh, but you know what else? You know what their number? Well, I can't say their number one drink because that would have to be water, but their number two drink would be tequila.
Tequila.
I thought it would be Diet Sundrop.
Right? No, they'll show up and it'll already be there.
Where'd this can come
Travis will
from?
be sitting there with his warp drive. Like, what the crap? What took y'all so
Oh, I
long?
launched that rocket like 26 years ago. I
Now,
didn't know that the can would make it.
now, Johnny, this was a ways before your time, but John or Roger, do you remember back in like 1978, 1979, there was a mini series on TV of Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles. It
Oh
was like a
gosh.
2 or 3 night episode kind of type deal. It had Rock Hudson was in it, and
Yeah.
um, I mean it was actually really, really, really good, and played up some of the alleged mythology of there being, the face on Mars and an ancient civilization, pyramids on Mars, So, folks, if you have a chance, and if you've never seen it, try to find that late '70s adaptation of Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles. It's a pretty good watch. I have it
I
on
think
DVD, so
I think a high school physics teacher might have actually played part of an episode for that of us or for us. So I
nice.
might actually know that.
Right on. It's a pretty interesting mini series if you get the chance to watch that. So that about wraps up what we have to present to you today, folks. Once again, I want to offer sincerest thanks and gratitude to Johnny Stratton and to John Nyberger and Roger Stokes for uh, sharing their Saturday night with us and talking about this wonderful, crazy, mixed up world of the UAP phenomena. And so, just to go around the room real quick, any closing thoughts or remarks? Roger, we'll start with you and work our way down.
Hey, great discussion tonight, gentlemen, and I appreciate the disclosure and topics. And yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk about all things strange, all things mysterious. And tonight was no different. Love the UAP congressional topic. And again, to our listeners and subscribers, for those of you that are in the United States, I definitely recommend to reach out to your congressional representatives, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and let them know your thoughts on the UAP topic and that you would like to, that it's an important topic for you. And with that, I'll pass that back over to Johnny Stratton to share his final
Yeah,
thoughts.
absolutely. Just like you said, write your congressman, and write to us below. Make sure you subscribe, all that fun stuff. We need those likes. We need them. And then let us know what you think about the UAP topic below, especially all that we've discussed today. John.
Yes. Like and subscribe, unless you like barnacles. Um,
What the hell
I,
is a barnacle? I'm
I,
okay. We go offline. You got to explain to me what the hell a
I
barnacles thing
am
is because
not explaining.
You
That
referenced it
joke was
last
for
week.
one person, and that person thought it was pretty damn funny. And now I
Hey,
just can't help but bring it up.
barnacles are aliens if you look at them closely.
Very
Barnacles
true.
are kind of aliens when you think about it. And no one likes barnacles. And barnacles kind
They're
of attach
invasive.
themselves, they're invasive and, yeah, anyway. No one likes barnacles.
Barnacle Bill does.
Barnacle Bill. No, I just want to say you know, agree with everything, Roger and Johnny said. It's important to keep up the pressure. Talk to your Congress people, write to them, better yet, call them. I've heard that calls do way more than emails and letters. So call their offices, leave voicemails or talk to a person if you can, but you'd probably leave a voicemail, you know, and just keep up the pressure. Other than that, again, it's a wonderful experience hanging out with you guys. Apologize for all the tangents. I'm in tangent mode tonight, so
Tangents make us all happy. It's okay.
yeah. Well,
There's only
thankfully
one.
Roger's here to keep me in line.
There's only two modes that are better than tangent mode, and that's a la mode and
And taco
Depeche
mode.
mode.
Oh,
Depeche mode.
Depeche mode.
Yes. Right on. Well, John, how are the Broncos going to do tomorrow?
Of course they're going to win.
Good. Good. That's what I want to
It's
hear.
against the Chargers. They've
I
got to
think you're
win.
playing the Chargers, so
Yes,
we gotta, your Broncos have to win tomorrow. On behalf of
correct,
Raider Nation, go Broncos.
correct. It's a moral imperative.
And
It is.
My Raiders are playing a team from your neck of the woods, Johnny. They're playing the Washington Commanders tomorrow. And
Hardly a football team, but you know.
Jaden Daniels, the star quarterback of the Washington Commanders, is out. So my Raiders do at least have a little bit of a sporting chance. And my Buffalo Bills already won on Thursday night, so we're good to go there. Johnny, how are your Ravens going to do tomorrow?
Hopefully they were going to win, but I mean, I'm so focused on work and this stuff, I haven't watched football in forever. In truth.
Right on, right on. Well, folks, thanks again for tuning in today. And again, a major thanks and gratitude to John, Johnny, and Roger. And as they all said, hit that like button because we like likes, and hit the subscribe button if you liked what you heard and you haven't subscribed yet. And we would love to hear your thoughts on what we had to say today in the comments section. So hit us up below and check us out on Facebook. We do post there occasionally. And with that, folks, just be awesome, love one another, take care of one another, be nice to bunnies, and eat as many tacos as you can, and just try to be a better person than you were today and yesterday. Try to lift people up instead of tear people down, because that's what life is all about. And so with that, folks, we will see you next time right here on the Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.